I'm Naya, mom, boob nerd, board-certified lactation consultant, and lover of lipstick and curse words. I'm that weird Indian girl you knew in high school, all grown up.
And I'm Alexis, mom, birth nerd, and therapist plus doula, encouraging parents to hold joy plus what the fuck is this mess simultaneously. Some people think I'm too much, but those aren't my people. And we are the Top Knot Squad. TKS is a tiny little podcast about motherhood in real life, the good, the bad, the ugly AF.
Hosted by two women that are passionate about our beliefs and unafraid to speak our minds.
Friends that wanted to create space for all that ish we are too scared to talk about.
Are you ready to laugh, be vulnerable, and keep it real with us?
Top knots are not required.
If the Top Knot Squad content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
On today's episode, we will be discussing parenting as a survivor of mental health, the impact that PMADs can have on our relationships, and the prolonged repair we have to engage in with our children and partners to maintain healthy attachment. We're excited to welcome our guest, Jill Birt. Jill is a registered nurse, certified yoga teacher with advanced training in yoga psychology, and an essential oil educator for doTERRA essential oils. She began her career as an RN here in Austin in 2001, caring for expectant mamas in labor and delivery. She found herself drawn to yoga and meditation for support as her family grew and life demands thickened. But it wasn't until she was trying to find her way out of the debilitating darkness of severe anxiety and depression that trailed postpartum psychosis that she really discovered the healing power of yoga. Through study and practice, she has learned yoga is far more than a physical experience. Her study of yoga has deepened her understanding of the human mind, body, and spirit, and the immense resource of intelligence within. The path of yoga has also led her to discover the vast support nature offers in holistic well-being. She believes the most effective form of healthcare is integrative holistic healthcare. She holds a great respect for the power nature offers in healing, values the advancements of modern science, and relies upon the wisdom and spiritual teachings of yoga. Whew, I did it.
Yay. You did it. Thank you.
Welcome, Jill. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, before we dive in and ask questions, I'm realizing I forgot to share about your family. Do you want to tell us who they are, how many kids you have?
Okay. Yeah, no, that's all good. So I have 3 kids. So I'm married to my high school sweetheart. That's hence the 21 years of marriage. We got married when we were 18.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have 3 kids. Our daughter, Haley, who is 21, and then we've got 2 boys who are 15. Quinn and Evan is 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, and you know, really, I really feel like my family, like my husband and I's commitment to just trucking through the ugly, beautiful realities of life is my proudest accomplishment because there's a lot of them.
Yes.
I love that.
Me too.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we're really glad you're here, and I think it would be good to start with hearing a little bit about your story and how we even came to have you come on.
Yeah, I would love to. And it was kind of crazy because, you know, I had a lot of nerves coming up, just preparing for today and this conversation. And so I was trying to think of how to manage them. And I did some yoga in my backyard, and then I just still kind of wasn't I was still feeling a little bit I don't know if it was excitement or jitters or what it was, but I had a lot of energy in my body. And so I decided, I'm going to either go take a real yoga class, a good yoga class to move all this energy, or I'm going to go for a run. I'll just see, what happens based on traffic, because coming down Mopac, So I ended up that I needed to go for a run because I couldn't get through traffic in time to get to the yoga class. And so I went to Town Lake, and I realized when I was there that it's almost exactly 10 years to the day, almost, not quite, that I fleeted to Town Lake to just whatever I needed to do to finally surrender and go to my doctor and say, and my husband, and admit that I was in psychosis and hallucinating. So after my son was born, I had postpartum depression.
This was your youngest?
My youngest, now 10 years old. I had postpartum depression. Well, I didn't have postpartum depression. Let me back up. I had anxiety. I had severe anxiety. And that it just started snowballing. And then it started to look like postpartum depression because I was hiding. I was so anxious that I was closing myself off. And like the only place that I could be in my house was in my bedroom with my bed perfectly made and everything perfectly situated. And I couldn't go anywhere else because I was terrified. So and when I went to talk to my doctor, I kind of was like, everything was like, sounded like textbook depression, like, well, I just want to crawl in a hole and, that kind of stuff, but it was actually anxiety is what was going on. So the anxiety, we kind of made some adjustments and got a little bit of help and stuff like that. She offered me medication and I declined at that time and my husband was involved. And so things got a little bit better with some of the like lifestyle, adjustments and getting extra help and stuff. And then the holidays came. And because he was born in October, and then we traveled during the holidays, and we were around family and stuff, so it kind of seemed like it wasn't quite that big of a deal. Well, I guess it was more like I was distracted by other things. And then we got back home, and I started getting back into the routine. I went back to work, and that's when it all went really south. So I was already having a lot of anxiety, and then going into work as a labor and delivery nurse, which is just like a really high stress environment, is what just sent me through the roof. Prior to that, I had been having some hallucinations, but I kind of didn't really like realize it, I don't think, or I don't know. I wasn't quite all there, but it was, it's all a little bit hazy. But anyway, at some point, I was at work, and that's when I had like the hallucination that I couldn't deny. And so I was totally freaked out. And I went home, and I didn't tell anybody. And except for that, I called my manager. I had a day off of work, actually. I had a day off of work, so I didn't tell anybody. And this hallucination was everywhere. It was a woman, and she was following me everywhere. So everywhere I went in my house, she was around. And it, freaked me out. And I had told my husband not that I was having hallucinations, but that I was not doing well and that I felt like he might need to have my mom come to, like, just be extra support. And my parents lived in Japan at the time. So
wow.
It was kind of a big deal, to have my mom come. So that was probably like a week or two before all of this really, like, got out of control. And then I called my manager and said, I'm not well. I can't come back to work. But I still didn't really say exactly what was going on. And then and so my mom arrived. And as soon as she arrived, I bolted out the door. And I went down to Town Lake, and I ran for literally until I couldn't run anymore. And I hadn't really been running. I was like, postpartum. And then finally I just, kind of surrendered. And I told my husband and went to my doctor and said, I'm having hallucinations. And it was like, go directly to Shoal Creek. Do not pass go. You're in psychosis. And, I was a labor and delivery nurse, so I was aware of what postpartum psychosis was. I just was like, for my own self, it was really hard to, first of all, admit to myself, and second of all, diagnose that. There was a part of me that was still very rational and could understand, like, you're just seeing something. And then it was like, well, she's following you everywhere. And then it's just like, holy shit, I can't be alone, And I just was really crazy. So so from there, that just kind of, then I got on medication and, got a lot of therapy and all of like the normal standard of care. But it didn't really, like, I appeared well. I appeared better, but I wasn't. I appeared stable. So kind of what happens, at least what I've seen and what happened to me, was you get stabilized. You get on a medication that stabilizes you, and then you start, quote unquote, functioning. Like, you can get yourself dressed by yourself now, and you can feed yourself, and you start kind of tiptoeing back and appear like you're normal again, even though you're not. And you even start kind of believing like, okay, everything's better. I'm starting to be better. And so you just dive right back in. So, you know, I don't remember exactly how long I took off of work, but then I right back on the bike, you know, like going back in, working as a labor and delivery nurse and 3 kids and and my husband was an ICU nurse. So we're rolling with like 12-hour shifts, each of us. And it was busy. And I just went up and just like, I'd tank, and then I'd take a month or 2 off of work and therapy and restabilize, and then I'd kind of climb back up again, and then I'd tank again. And I did that for 6 years, up and down until I hit I hit rock bottom, and I just couldn't, there was nothing could do. I was completely debilitated. I could not drive a car. It was anxiety. The anxiety was what was debilitating me. And again, so I became depressed, but it was anxiety is what was happening. I was not functional. So literally I couldn't even put my own clothes on. Like my husband would try to, he'd be like, come on, we got to go for a run today. We got to get up. And I'd be like, I don't even know how to what clothes to put on. I can't pick out clothes. I can't go for a run. And so he would like put my clothes on me and put earphones in my ears and like did everything. And we went through a year of like intense therapy. I didn't work. I was on and off multiple different medications. And I just wasn't. I moved out of my house for a month, was in intensive outpatient therapy. And that was not even, it was very like, I was seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and then 3 days a week in intensive outpatient therapy. So every day I was, in therapy. And I still just, it was like, a little nudge of improvement, but I would just go through these cycles where I would tank again. And my husband's job was, he would have to like call into work because he'd have to be home with me. I'd have to be watched. I was suicidal, and it was just a mess.
And how old was your son at that point?
By that time he was 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that when we talked about you coming on to share, it was you really wanted to bring light to that part of it, that there's lots of attention paid to immediately postpartum, which is technically considered the first year. It has a time stamp. But beyond that year, it's not talked about as much. There's not as much of a push for support. People aren't checking in on you as much.
Nobody really talks about those relationships that you have with your close family members and your partners and your children that get affected by any kind of mood or anxiety disorder. So there's a lot after the fact, but no one says anything about it. It's just kind of like you said, where you just got right back on the bike and you just started going to work and acting like everything was fine. I feel like that's kind of what we as mothers are expected to do once we're quote unquote normal again or functioning again. But what about all the other stuff?
Yeah. I mean, and I take no offense at all from this, but I had coworkers who were like, "But you're so normal," and I was like, "I know, I am normal. I'm a normal person. This is just
I'm still human."
Yeah. And so and. It was just like I tried so hard. I was trying to do everything that I was told to do, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. And that at that point, I was suicidal for sure. And it was like I had gotten to this place where I was kind of like this is it. This is the best it's going to get. This is what my road looks like from now on. And I think that so many people live there because, in all honesty, like everything that is out there is kind of supporting that. You know what I mean? Like, well, you have a family history. So, and I do have a family history. I have one uncle who we lost. My grandfather was a severe bipolar disorder, manic depressive. I have another, just my whole really, I have a significant family history. And so that's also what I saw, was like well, lots of adults in my life are stuck on this road. I guess that's the path I get too. And I really did believe that, but then there was something inside of me that was like, no, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was yoga. And it just kind of came down to, like, honestly, it was like I was at do or die. It was like either I just go completely rogue here or I'm going to die, because those are the only two options I can see. And I was telling my husband, like, I was begging him to divorce me, to like get on with his life, because I wasn't going to come out of it alive, and so he might as well just go ahead and get the kids like situated and used to a new life. And he was like, refused that, obviously. And so then I just was like, okay, I'm going a different direction. And it was like a complete 180 from kind of what we're offered, and it was directly into the pain. What we're really offered is everything to take the pain away. And it was like, I got to go. The only way out is through.
I love that.
So I just, and that's what yoga gave me. It gave me, I went straight through the pain, but it gave me support, like straight in, but it gave me it's like a lighted path.
Yes.
Like you take a candle
into
the cave.
You didn't feel quite so blind navigating through all of it.
I had like some bumper guards and, a little bit.
You were held more.
Yeah, I was held through it. Yeah. So you can I say, like, that you sent me the questions ahead of time? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
We send questions to our guests.
So I just gave the whole story, and I wish I would have read this, and so I don't know if you want to cut it out or if you want to redo it like this. But you asked me, what do you mean by the long road of repair, right? And so when I was trying to figure out what do I mean by the long road of repair, because that's what we had talked about this being at, and so I started to write down I have this habit of, when people ask me, what does it feel like or what does it look like, I love nature, and so I just immediately relate it to nature. And so that's what I did here. So this is kind of how I would explain the long road of recovery for me. So it's like heading out on this awesome adventure is kind of how I think of it, how it started out, like something like, just life generally is what I'm referring to, but maybe motherhood. Something like you're going to conquer the Appalachian Trail or something really awesome. And it's going to have challenges, and you're expecting it to, and there's going to be some standout struggles, and you might get hurt a little bit along the way. But you manage to kind of like stay on your feet. And then for me, about halfway along the trail, this huge storm blew through, and I didn't really pay attention to warning signs and sirens, and like I just got swept up in a tornado, and it reamed me. It just took me around and around and around, and then it just like spit me out. It was the wildest ride of my life, that psychosis. And then it just spit me out like somewhere on the mountain. And it wasn't a path I'd known. It didn't, there was some little bits of familiarity, like recognizable stuff, like, oh, maybe, yikes, what's that? And what, but there wasn't, I was lost. I was so lost. Like, I didn't know, I couldn't tell my head from my ass,
Yeah.
And then, but then it was like I was saying, like, you get the medication and, this kind of stuff. And so it's like, okay, dust yourself off, get back up, get back on the trail. But I couldn't find the trail.
Right.
And so I was just going in what I thought was the right direction. And then, oh, no, that's not the right direction. And so then I'm turning in the other direction. And in the whole way, I'm kind of stumbling and tripping and falling. And then I find my way to what I think this is the right trail. I'm going to go, this is the right trail. This is where the signs are pointing me. This is the way to go. I'm going to find civilization. And instead, here comes another huge storm. And this time it's like, it just takes me in a mudslide, like down the hill, like as fast as you could imagine, just rolling downhill until I land at the bottom in, a dark, dark valley, like way down deep at the basin. And then I'm like covered in mud. And I remember my brother-in-law, he once called to check in on me. He's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Well, like the mud outside the porta potties on like the last Sunday at ACL." I was like, I think I made it out of that. I'm not in that mud anymore. I'm like in that kind of the good mud that you get at a spa, maybe. Like I'm still in the mud, but it feels like might be breaking through a little bit. So it's like, and then crawling out of the mud and like going for any low-hanging branch I can find, just give me something so I can breathe. Give me anything. You get out of the mud and just kind of start to like lick your wounds, like, okay, I'm where am I hurt? And then trying to make sense of how did I get here? What happened? How did I fall down here? And piecing together these little, like, I remember this and I remember that. And then little by little, I'm like down here in this deep, dark valley, and I'm trying to piece something together. And I'm like, I got nothing. Like, nothing is helping me. Nothing down, nothing that I thought in this backpack. Everything's gone. Nothing's helping me. I can't use any of it. Like, the matches are wet, whatever. Nothing's working. And so start scavenging for something new. How do I get myself back up that mountain? And so that's really what yoga was to me. And it wasn't perfect. It's like imagining, you're like, try that berry. You think you've eaten that one before, and then you've got like severe vomiting and diarrhea, and, and then it's like, okay, that berry's no good. And then, maybe I'll try a different one. And then that one, that looks kind of the same, but I'm sure it's different. And then the same thing again, how you repeat those behaviors and those habits, but little by little, like still making steady upward progress. Like there's some awareness there. And so I, and that was like the trek down. And then you got to get back up out of that. And so as it's starting to rise back up, it's like, now it's taken me a little while, like, got like long hair in my armpits and stuff. Like it's not a pretty situation. Right. And at that point, like, I'm starting to rise up a little bit, and that's the point when really, like, my husband's starting to be like, he's worn down and he's agitated, and now I've got a little bit of fight in me, and I'm trying to fight my way out. And so we're starting to, like, knock heads a little bit. And then we kind of reverse, and he's like, I'm ready to leave. Before he was like, no, I'm holding on for life. And then he's like, this is not pretty. I don't like the way this looks coming back out. And then it, so we really had to work really hard to get through that. He went to NAMI. I don't know if you're familiar with NAMI. Resource just to put out there for anybody, it doesn't have to be postpartum, just any mental health. It's for families. It's kind of like Al-Anon is for alcoholics, but NAMI is for the family and friends of those who are with mental illness. It was awesome for him. And then, like, moving up that mountain, and there's some fallen trees and some boulders. Like, that mudslide did damage. You start to realize, like, well, it wasn't just me here. But you've got this new awareness. Like, I had definitely a newer sense of awareness of what was going on, because I'm the same person, but I learned a lot falling down the hill and trying to climb back out, and so then, now I'm kind of like, I'm on that hill and I'm climbing back up, and I'm starting to notice, like, that, there's damage that occurred on the way down. And so now it's a rebuilding process, and it's about taking the time to really pay attention and see, like, what did I contribute to this fall, and what was given to me that I didn't really ask for to carry along on the way down, and what did I pass off to somebody else on my way down. There's a lot. It's pretty sticky and thick. So that's the long road of true recovery, is like, once you're starting to get back up, is to really be aware of how'd you get there in the first place. And then I I don't know her personally as a teacher, but I really resource Sally Kempton a lot. She's a beautiful yoga meditation teacher, really, and she teaches a lot on the scripture. Well, scripture is not the right word, but just the spiritual teachings of yoga. Mm-hmm. And I heard her say, like, how do you get into a situation and not respond in a way that creates more negative karma? You know, like, how do you want to turn it in the opposite way. You want to make it positive. So that's really what I'm trying for now. Working a lot with just being aware of, you know, how it affected my kids and my my husband and I's relationship. And you know, most of my friendships really fared really well. Some people maybe, I think I didn't have time for a lot of people because I was in the thick of that. And so it's possible there's some hurt feelings that I don't know about, but I feel really lucky to have had a lot of support along the way. And my parents were in the house, you know, they were supporting a lot. My in-law, you know, I just had a lot of support, a lot of family, Chris's siblings, and we had a lot of support all the way around. My best friends were awesome. So that was really good. But there was a lot of like, what's going on, you know? And so that's been interesting. Just trying to now. I haven't had a lot of time to really explain to people like what happened because I've been so focused on just my family. So in terms of like reconnecting with my husband and kids, it's really just I've learned so much through yoga. And so because it's been so helpful for me, that's my approach with them. I've been spending the last year in a training in California, and that's the advanced yoga psychology training. And so I've just learned so much from that, and it's been so healing. And I've taken a lot of that and implemented it little by little. You know, you can't just like take all this stuff and throw it on your family or they don't like it.
Yeah. Hey, 10-year-old, let's sit down and do yoga together. Yeah. I have a 9-year-old, so I get it.
Yeah.
Were you a complete stranger to yoga before you discovered it?
No. I was doing yoga, I started doing yoga when my daughter was like 3. Her and I would do yoga together, but you know, I was just going to classes. So you can get a little bit in your classes, but a lot of the classes, and for good or for bad, are kind of more directed towards physical fitness. It's kind of trended in that way. And I needed what lies beyond that. Because in yoga, there's 8 limbs of yoga, and the physical part is just one. And there's 7 other limbs that are extremely powerful. And that's what I needed. And so that's why I went into teacher trainings, just because I wanted to learn and was like, there's something here, and I am not getting what I need out of just these classes, so I need to go further.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, we talked a little bit about reconnecting with your husband and your kids. What about with yourself? What do you now do to kind of check in with yourself or reconnect?
Oh yeah, that's the whole thing has been myself. So there's something in yoga called that's self-study, svadhyaya, and it's just a everyday, daily, observe this situation and sit down, or you get into a situation and you sit down and you observe it. Just really self-studying. So that's a big piece of it. What do I need? Sitting down and quieting. What do I need? Every day there's some bit of self-care that looks different than the average self-care. So it's usually breath practices every day, some type of movement, meditation, prayer, something that's just really filling me up. Also just eating and drinking and going to bed and, putting things in my body that. So in yoga, there's prana is your vital energy, and putting things in my body that build prana, don't take away prana, because some of the things we eat, it takes so much work for our bodies to metabolize and digest them that they're actually not energizing us or nourishing us as much as we want them to be. They're taking a lot away from us. So just learning all of that has been really supportive for me.
Makes a lot of sense. We, in previous episodes, Alexis and I have talked about just kind of that, what she's referred to as tuning in rather than tuning out. And so it's, we've talked a lot about it. And yes, I love that.
Which I think also speaks to what you said earlier about like going through, you know, like you have to go through, and in our culture, in American culture, that's very like not encouraged. You want to avoid. And even like if you mention to someone, like I meditate, they have ideas of what that means, right?
Yeah.
And it's not, I think what's really being communicated there is like, I'm uncomfortable with like sitting in my own mess. So I don't understand how you're doing that. But that's what we've been conditioned in this culture to believe and understand about being human. And it's wrong.
Yeah, no, it totally is. I mean, it was 100% wrong for me. I mean, it only made me worse. And so, and this is just, I mean, you see me now in front of you, you know, I dressed myself today more than once and bathed myself, drove myself here. I'm very functional and happy. And, you know, in no way am I saying like, everything's perfect now. It's always going to be work, I think, especially given, you know, knowing now that partly I led myself into it. You know, I'm not blaming myself. It's not like I'm beating myself up about it, but it's just recognizing that there were behaviors and patterns that I learned or that I thought were healthy for me, and they weren't. And they weren't contributing, you know, in the whole, they were actually contributing to, they were a detriment than, you know, supportive. So, and then nature is just like, and that's the other thing that yoga really reconnected me with was spirituality and nature. And I had kind of lost a little bit of that. And that's always been a huge support for me. And that's how I got into essential oils and finding like natural ways to support my mood and other reduce toxins and, you know, just find other ways to support my health.
Makes sense. Yeah. Very cool.
You just made me think of something and it left my brain. But I did think of something else when you were reading the story, your analogy for the long road to recovery. I kept thinking of the movie Jumanji.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And the like lives, like you only, like you keep having to come back.
At your bar.
Yes.
Where like, I think sometimes we get, you know, and you kind of spoke to that, like we get stuck in this, I don't have anything else to do, but like in that movie, there's like a restart. It's like, no, let's try that again. You're going to keep going.
I love that.
Yeah, I just kept thinking of that. But that was the other thing I was going to say is when you first described the long road to me, like for me, I don't think there's an end game. Like when it comes to mental health and being human and life, like it keeps coming at you. You may have risk factors hanging out behind you that impact how you receive that. But like we're always going to have to be doing the work. We're always going to have to be unlearning. We're always going to have to be reteaching ourselves how to come back to self and how to use the tools that we know work for us. So I don't know. I also thought of that when you were talking that there's really no, like we're going to be doing this until we die.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's like, you know, and it's like I was thinking about that mountain. I'm like, oh, there's like this like displaced wild animal, you know, from that giant storm, and now, there he is. You know,
exactly.
It's like totally snuck up on you, and you didn't even know it was coming, and threw you totally off path. And you know, that is the thing that I don't think is talked about enough about parenting is. And I know I'm not the only one because I've discussed this with, you know, other mothers that have gone through this. And I don't think it's just mothers. I think it's all parents as I witness. Each stage that you go through with your child as a parent, you're reliving that stage as of your own childhood.
Yes.
And if there's anything that hadn't been resolved, it's going to come up.
It's going to come right up, yes.
And so, you know, and it's going to happen with every kid because each kid is going to remind you of something different than the other kid. And so, you know, like you go through all those, you're reliving your childhood over and over and over again. And none of us get out of childhood unscarred, you know. We all have bumps and bruises along the way. I mean, we need to. It's a part of life, but there's some things that you can really get hooked onto, and the next thing you know, you're in a downward spiral. And I think that is the thing for me that is where I'm trying to do the most work, is to catch myself when I get into something like that, so that, because the biggest sad point I have right now is that I was so caught up in my own emotional distraughtness that I missed a lot of my kids, what was going on with my kids.
Yeah.
And I may have appeared to be there, and I'm not saying I missed the whole thing, but in terms of being emotionally attuned to what was going on with my kids, I wasn't able to be, because I was too in my own muck. And that's where I'm really working really hard on now, is to notice, okay, this is catching me. It's like Velcro, it's got a hold of me, and it's actually not them, like I've got to get a hold of this so that I can help them, and not get pulled away from them. So it's just a lot of self-awareness and sifting through like what's going on here really. We had my son, so our daughter is in college, and she came home from school over the holidays, and then she was going back. And when she was going back to school, it was really traumatic for all my kids. My parents are visiting, so all 3 kids were sleeping, and we only have 3-bedroom house. They're sleeping in 1 bedroom during the holiday together, which was actually really sweet.
Yeah.
Because it got old after a little bit, but they were giggling and sleeping together every night, which was kind of fun for them. And so it was really hard when she was leaving for all of us, but especially for them, because the boys, had that time with her, and then she was leaving again. And it was really hard for her. But my youngest, it was like PTSD. I mean, he was out of control. And it immediately, could feel like full storm panic attack coming on. And my immediate thought was, this is all my fault. Because I left him when he was 3. I left the house to go and it was very vague what was going on, because I was not well. And, and so I got caught up in my own story real fast, that this is all my fault, and I'm trying to appease him, basically, in any possible way I can, because I'm feeling so guilty that this is all my fault. And, yes, I do believe that a piece of that was an effect of, we all know it's out there in all of the research and literature, like a mother with postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety or any kind of postpartum mood disorder, it has an effect on the kids, right? That's always the argument for why to put them on antidepressants, honestly.
But the good thing is there can be repair. Like, you're not doomed because that happened, right?
Oh no, not at all. Yeah. But that's what to me is the long road of recovery, is really, really putting the work in for me to then catch myself in that and go, wait a minute, hold on here. What does he really need? Stop your story. What's going on? What does he need? You can help him. You've got tools to help him. You know how to help him. You can deal with that later, and that's what I've gotten from all the work I've done in yoga and the work in just the hard work of self-study and getting support, and in the specific yoga psychology program reinforced it. But I learned that even just from the teachings of yoga. Like, there's something called samskaras, and there's principles about, samskaras are like these, we would call them neuropathways, like how we create these neuropathways. Like, you get in a car and drive, and you know what to do, right? So we carve these grooves into our brain, and we carve grooves emotionally as well. And those are, in yoga, they're known as samskaras, and we have to make new grooves, new samskaras, you know? And so that's the practice of stopping yourself when you catch yourself going down that road, down that, travel of your mind chatter, and you're talking and you're beating yourself up, and just stop, put a halt to it, and make a new groove. And it's a positive one, and it's a rebuilding one. And so for me, it's brought tremendous healing to my family, just the work that I'm doing. And I also think it will proliferate for generations because this is something my family's been, trying to deal with for a long time, is mental illness.
Well, yeah, I mean, your work is changing genetics for your future generations.
Epigenetics.
Like it's
I
love
epigenetics.
Yeah.
I'm like a total nerd for epigenetics.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
So, I mean, you literally are shifting that, and the next generation is going to have something different, right? So, that's what I always love. Like, the brain nerd in me is like, we have this wonderful part of like our entire body, the whole system, not just the brain. The body, the nervous system, the brain are like all wired, like you said, to make those new grooves, to heal wounds, to make new pathways, to repair attachments. Like all of it can be fixed.
Yeah.
So just because there was damage doesn't mean that you're doomed.
Right.
Yeah. The line I got, over and over again was, and I realize now it was very unhealthy, and it came from my provider, was, it's like you've got a broken ankle and you just need to take this medication to fix the broken ankle and you'll be fine. And it didn't work for me. It wasn't a good line. Actually, it really did not inspire me at all. And it wasn't fixing my broken ankle either, you know? And so, it gave the message that like I couldn't repair on my own. Like I needed this. And certainly, obviously, I chose yoga, so I needed a guide. But the work is all happening inside of me.
Right.
It's me doing the work, not, something. And I certainly don't want to, like, if anybody takes medication and it's effective for them, I'm not, judging or anything like that. It's just, I think that a lot of people have had similar experiences to me where they've stayed on the path and that's where they live, or, they don't make it off.
Yeah, medication, I mean, there's studies that exist that say you have to be engaged in multiple supports for change to happen, right? So medication is one avenue. Yeah. But you also have to be doing other things or the change isn't actually going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. And, and I'm doing, like you heard me list all the things that I'm doing,
right.
It's multiple. And that's just not even all of it. There's just so much. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, as much as we'd love to keep you here and chat all night,
I think we can go over just a little
okay.
and ask a couple questions.
Yes, let's ask questions.
So our new in segment is The Squad Wants to Know. So these are questions from our listeners and
followers on social
media followers. What question stands out to you, Naya?
So I definitely wanted to ask the one, because it got asked a couple of times, how long is it, and this might be a question that we can all chime in on, but how long is it considered postpartum? And when is it just anxiety, depression, or something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, technically, I think the actual postpartum period is the first year postpartum. And then, but the other piece of that is like, was there anxiety and depression beforehand, or,
right.
That kind of thing. So it's really hard sometimes to find like be black or white on that. But technically the postpartum period is, as I know it, is up to 1 year postpartum.
It also has to do with like how you're identifying onset, right? So that's what you're speaking to, is like, did this exist prior to postpartum period, or is this new? So like, was the onset in postpartum, right?
Yes.
So, and then beyond that, like depending on risk factors, like, because somebody else asked about weaning, right?
Yeah.
Was that in here?
Yeah, that's in here too.
I mean, I don't particularly love the year marker because it is so like complex and hard to kind of figure out when exactly was this onset, right?
Yeah.
But then whether you had it before or not, like postpartum comes with new stressors. You aren't sleeping. Like it's going to exacerbate it anyways. So postpartum may feel really different than any other time in your life when you dealt with anxiety or depression, right?
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy that like the human race is as big as it's grown to think of what postpartum, you know what I mean? Like, here's this human being, and by the way, you're not going to sleep and you might not get to eat, and good luck.
Yeah, no.
Like it's a wonder that we make it as far as we do.
But even related to weaning, I think for a lot of people, like they're doing fine, they're appearing to be fine, and then like something like that can be the trigger, So it's enough to be like, whoa, now I feel like I'm in a downward spiral. Or it could be going back to work, or it could be relationship stress. Like there's lots of markers along the way that can kind of be that trigger to like send you into it. And maybe there were some warning signs before and you were able to coast through and those were missed.
And now you're just under a magnifying glass. Yeah.
And I just feel like that discovery sometimes happens beyond that year. And so that's where it can be harmful of identifying it's just this year. So then people are really confused and it's like, well, no, it's way too complex. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
there's so much in there, and
from the textbook,
it really. And I know, like one of the questions was about weaning, and from what I have learned, that they're definitely, like you said, like that's a marker that. And I know for me, I breastfed way past a year because I was really scared that I would, that would happen again. So I was like 2.5 years in before I stopped breastfeeding, just merely for the fear of it happening again. So, and there's just so many, It's very individualized, and it's hard to put it in a textbook. But I think if we were to look it up in a textbook, it would say 1 year.
1 year, yeah.
I want to ask one more. Can I? Yeah. I liked the first question here about what does it mean to be a survivor of mental illness, and so this the person who submitted this question shared that her partner has schizoaffective disorder, and she knows that it impacts her kids. So, like, who's the survivor, you or the kid? I don't know if you...
I would say my whole family. Honestly, I really feel like my whole family is on this track. Like, even financially, we've all struggled, and my kids have definitely had to make sacrifices because of it. And so, as we rise up from it, like, I want to celebrate that as a family in all the ways that we struggled. We're, like, rising up all the way on all ends of it. So... And she didn't list herself, but she herself also, because she talked about her kids, but she didn't talk about herself. And she's really in this is a huge survivor because she's not only supporting her husband and her kids and herself. Like she's, I mean, I know my husband was towing a huge line. So, and him, as they're working through it, I would say the whole family, honestly, that's my feeling on it.
Yeah. I 1,000% agree.
And then she had asked about a book, and was that her? Or did
somebody else? Somebody else asked about a children's book to help explain it.
I don't know a children's book that helps explain it, but there is a woman, Lisa Weinberger, and she does a lot on neurobiology and just all kinds of, anyway, she, I don't want to go into her whole story, but she had her own traumatic situation that her daughter was witness to. And so she wrote this book to help her daughter, with the fear. And it's called The Monster Under Your Bed by Lisa Weinberger.
Yeah, I wrote down this is specifically a children's book called Hey Warrior that I put down here that we'll put in the show notes for you guys listening. But it teaches kids about the stress response, essentially. And you get to name your amygdala. And it's like, hey, it's like your amygdala is this warrior that's there to fight for you. And you give it a name. And it's very cute.
Oh, that's really cool.
But...
And all three of my kids I put in this I kind of did force yoga on them, but I put them in a yoga program for each of them that was age appropriate, and it is here in Austin. I'll give you the name of it. We can put it in the show notes. The name of it it's at Yoga Tree in Austin, and the name of it isn't coming to me at the moment. We
can look it up.
But anyway, I'll look it up, and I don't know why I can't remember it right now. But it was really helpful in just teaching my kids, some breathing and meditation and stuff like that. And I wanted them to have some of those tools. Yeah. And it's hard to, when you're a parent, your kids don't really want to listen to you that much.
Well, we're over time.
I know.
Wish we need a part 2.
I'm sorry.
But is there anything you want to share coming up for you?
How people can find you.
Yeah.
So I am on Instagram on Jill M. Birt at Jill M. Birt on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not as good as Facebook. And I have a website, jillbirtyoga.com. And I do the Prepared series, which is a childbirth education series where I'm really focused on preparing mothers emotionally. So we do talk about labor and delivery, but it's from a very different perspective. And we do a lot of breath work and meditation and yoga. And it's much more of an emotional preparation for motherhood versus versus your intellectual. It is highly intellectual, actually, I will say, but it's just different. It's
not like the medical aspect or the physiological aspect of it.
There's a lot of physiology in there, but it's tied to energetics. So I get really deep into understanding the energetics of labor and delivery rather than and through the lens of science, but also through a lens of experience, what you're going to experience. So that I just finished that, and the next one's coming up at the Little Yoga House, and we're working on the dates.
Yay! I might participate.
Yes, I'm hoping that you can. So I'm really excited about that. The last one went so well, and I've gotten such great feedback that it's just really different than anything else that women have gone through, and they really love it. And then I'm also working on a series. It's going to be a monthly series called Untether, which will be a longer, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I think more like an hour and a half yoga class, but it won't be your typical yoga class. It's more about just kind of unwinding, just the bonds of modern life is kind of how I'm phrasing it, and just using movement and then breath work and the aspects of yoga that have really been really healing to me. And so putting that into a longer yoga class, kind of a once a month workshop style.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you
so much for being here.
And wait, one more. Let me add in. Sorry, I just remembered. I also have a Breathe Well workshop, which is happening at Soul Strong Yoga in March. And that's where we'll learn about the science behind breath and how breathing can really be it's one of the best tools you have. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
If you're, everybody can breathe. So
love it.
Thank you, ladies, so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It was such a pleasure to be here with you.
We're so glad that you were here. Thank you.
Thanks.
If the Top Knot Squad's content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
If you like what you hear, then be sure to click the subscribe button in your podcast app. While you're there, leave us a review. You can find us on social media. Just search for Top Knot Squad. We welcome your feedback and love making new friends.